The debris field stretched further than any scanner could map, a graveyard of shattered hulls tumbling silently around a dead star that had once been called Solheim Prime. Grand Overseer Calix Thren stood on the observation deck of his flagship, staring at the wreckage his own empire had left behind 23 years earlier, when the Thren Dominion had declared the human species extinct and closed the file forever. He had signed that declaration himself as a junior officer. He had believed it. Every scan, every survivor count, every burned colony confirmed it. Humanity was gone. So when his sensor officer's voice cracked through the silence of the bridge, Calix assumed it was a malfunction. Overseer, I have one contact. Just one. Human hull signature, confirmed against pre-extinction records. It's approaching at flank speed, and Overseer, it isn't hiding. Calix felt something cold move through his chest. A feeling his species didn't have a name for because they had never needed one before tonight. That's impossible. There is no human fleet left to send a single ship. There isn't a fleet, sir, the sensor officer whispered. There's just the one, and it's headed directly for the Dominion's capital. 3 days earlier, none of this had seemed possible, because as far as the galaxy was concerned, humanity's story had ended long ago. The extinction of Earth's colonies had become galactic legend, taught in 100 systems as a cautionary tale about what happened to species that expanded too fast, trusted too easily, and built empires on foundations too fragile to survive first contact with a hostile universe. 23 years earlier, the Thren Dominion had swept through human territory in a campaign of such overwhelming force that resistance had collapsed within months. Colony after colony fell. Earth itself, humanity's cradle, was struck by a weapon so devastating that Dominion historians still referred to it only by its classification number, refusing to speak its name aloud. When the campaign ended, the Dominion's council had declared humanity extinct, closed the file, and moved on to conquests that seemed more worthy of their attention. For over 2 decades, no human voice had been heard anywhere in known space. The silence had been so complete, so total, that even skeptical historians had eventually stopped questioning the official record. What the Dominion never knew, what not even their most sophisticated intelligence networks had ever detected, was that a single research vessel had survived the fall of Earth by doing something no Dominion strategist would have predicted. It ran, not toward the safety of Allied space, but into the deepest, coldest, most hostile region of unexplored territory the galaxy had to offer. A region so dangerous that even the Dominion's own scouts refused to chart it. The vessel was called the Ashwood Vigil, and aboard her, a crew of 41 survivors, led by a young engineer named Captain Sarah Kestrel, had made a choice that would come to define the next 23 years of their lives. They would not run forever. They would not hide forever. They would build something the Dominion could never see coming, and they would wait, however long it took, for the moment they could bring it home. Sarah Kestrel had been 26 years old when Earth fell, a junior systems engineer aboard a research vessel that had been 3 light-years away, conducting deep field survey work when the Dominion's fleet arrived. She remembered the last transmission from Earth with a clarity that never faded no matter how many years passed. Her mother's voice, calm even as the world burned around her, telling Sarah not to come back, telling her to survive, telling her that survival itself was a kind of resistance. Sarah had wanted to disobey that order every single day since. Instead, she had spent 23 years turning grief into something the galaxy had never seen. A warship built not from the wreckage of a dying empire, but from decades of patient, disciplined, uninterrupted innovation, hidden in a region of space so hostile that even radiation itself seemed to conspire to keep intruders away. The ship she built was called the Requiem, and it carried a crew of exactly 1. That wasn't even the strangest part of what the Dominion was about to discover. The Requiem's design broke every convention the galaxy's engineers had settled into over centuries of relatively static warfare. Where Dominion warships relied on massed fleets, redundant crews, and overwhelming numbers to guarantee victory, Sarah had built a single vessel designed around a philosophy her surviving crew had spent 2 decades perfecting. Total systems integration, where the ship's core intelligence and its captain functioned as a single decision-making entity, reacting to threats faster than any crewed vessel possibly could, because there was no chain of command to slow the response down. It was reckless, it was dangerous. Every engineer on the Ashwood Vigil had told Sarah, at one point or another, that a single point of failure like this would get her killed the first time she faced real opposition. Sarah had built it anyway, because she had spent 23 years watching Dominion tactics, and she understood something none of their strategists had ever considered. An empire built on numbers has no answer for an opponent it cannot outnumber into submission. The first 3 days of the Requiem's return campaign moved with a speed that stunned even Sarah's own remaining crew back at the hidden shipyard, now monitoring her progress from 4 light-years away. She did not attack Dominion military targets first, and this was the twist nobody, not even her own advisors, had expected. Instead, the Requiem appeared without warning at 3 separate Dominion listening posts along the border, disabled their communication arrays with surgical precision, and vanished before a single defensive shot could be fired. No casualties, no wreckage, just silence where Dominion ears used to be. It took the Dominion's Central Command nearly 18 hours to realize their border intelligence network had gone dark. And by the time they understood what was happening, the Requiem was already 3 systems deeper into their territory than anyone believed possible. Grand Overseer Calix Thren convened an emergency session the moment the pattern became clear. "One ship," Fleet Marshal Oria Vex said, disbelief sharp in her voice. "A species we declared extinct, and a single vessel has disabled our border communications without engaging a single warship?" Calix stared at the tactical display, and something in the pattern disturbed him more than the ship's capabilities ever could. "She isn't attacking randomly," he said finally. "Every post she's hit sits along the exact route our fleet took 23 years ago. She's retracing our invasion, Marshal. In reverse." The council chamber fell into a silence heavier than anything Calix had experienced in his 40 years of service, because every officer in that room understood immediately what the pattern meant. This wasn't conquest. This wasn't even revenge in the way the Dominion understood the concept. This was a woman walking backward through the worst days of her species' history, one silenced listening post at a time, and no one in that chamber could say with confidence where the path would end. The true crisis arrived 4 days later, when the Requiem made contact with its first Dominion warship, not through weapons fire but through an open comm channel. Captain Ves Ondara, ordered to intercept and destroy the human vessel on sight, received instead a voice, calm and measured, carrying an exhaustion that stretched back decades. "Captain Ondara, I'm not here for your ship or your crew. Relay a message to your Grand Overseer. Tell him the Ashwood Vigil is still out there. Tell him there are more of us than his intelligence suggests. And tell him this is his last chance to end this without losing everything his empire has built." Ondara, stunned, held his fire and relayed the message exactly as given. It was the first mercy the Dominion had received from humanity in 23 years, and it terrified them more than any attack could have. Calix read the transcript 17 times before understanding what disturbed him most. The Requiem hadn't threatened Ondara. It had warned him, a difference Dominion doctrine had never accounted for. "She's giving us a choice," he told Vex, late into the night. "After everything we did to her people, she's still giving us a choice." Vex, who had lost her own brother in the original invasion, didn't share his unease. "A choice is a weakness. We should have destroyed that ship the moment we detected it." "Perhaps," Calix said, "or perhaps mercy from a species we tried to erase, is the most dangerous weapon she could have brought against us." The confrontation that followed was not the battle the War Council had spent 4 days preparing for. When the Requiem reached the Dominion capital's defense perimeter, she found not a massed fleet but a single vessel waiting alone. Calix's own flagship, stripped of its escort by his direct order, broadcasting an open channel before a single weapon was raised. "Captain Kestrel," he said, his voice carrying across the void between 2 ships that represented an entire war's weight. "I commanded the fleet that destroyed your homeworld. If you've come for justice, I won't ask my fleet to die stopping you. But I'm asking you, captain to captain, to let me explain what happened that day, because I don't believe either of us fully understands it." Sarah Kestrel had rehearsed 100 different responses to this moment across 23 years of planning, grief, and quiet, disciplined rage. Every version had ended in fire. Standing now in the command chair of the ship she had built with her own hands, staring at the man whose orders had erased everything she once loved, she found herself saying something none of her rehearsals had prepared her for. "Then explain it, Overseer." "Because I've spent 23 years building a weapon capable of ending your empire in a single afternoon, and the only reason I haven't used it yet is that some part of me still needed to understand why." What Calix told her over the next 2 hours would change the course of galactic history. Though neither of them fully grasped that yet. The invasion of Earth, he explained, had not been ordered by the Dominion's War Council out of conquest or cruelty, but out of a catastrophic intelligence failure. A report, later proven false, that human researchers had developed a weapon capable of destabilizing star systems, a weapon the Dominion believed posed an existential threat to every civilization within 100 light years. The invasion had been a preemptive strike against a threat that never actually existed, built on faulty intelligence from a source the Dominion had trusted completely, and had since quietly, shamefully, discredited. It did not undo what happened. It did not bring back Sarah's mother, or the billions of lives lost on Earth and its colonies. But it explained, for the first time in 23 years, why it had happened at all, and Sarah found that the explanation changed something in her she hadn't expected to feel again, the smallest, most reluctant flicker of something other than grief. The final twist came from Fleet Marshal Vex, who disobeyed orders and moved a hidden strike wing behind the Requiem, determined to end the threat regardless of what her overseer decided. The ambush would have worked, if not for the very system Sarah had spent 2 decades perfecting. The ship's integrated intelligence detected the power signatures 4 minutes early, and the Requiem moved faster than any crewed vessel in Dominion history, disabling all 6 warships without a single fatality. Vex's mutiny ended not in battle but in humiliating silence, her strike wing drifting powerless while Calix demanded an explanation before the same council that had once trusted her completely. In the aftermath, Calix stripped Vex of her command, opened the Dominion's full archives on the Earth campaign to Sarah, and proposed something no overseer had ever offered a species they'd tried to erase. A formal treaty of reparation, acknowledging the catastrophic error and committing resources across a generation to rebuild humanity's scattered survivors. Sarah didn't accept easily, but 3 months later, standing at a memorial built on the ashes of Solheim Prime, she and Calix signed an agreement the galaxy would remember for centuries. Not as an empire's downfall, but as proof of what became possible when a devastated people chose understanding over annihilation, even with annihilation well within reach. Word of the treaty spread through 100 systems within weeks, and the legend that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had told about humanity before. Not a story of a fragile species crushed by a hostile universe, and not a story of vengeance delivered by a lone avenging warship, but something rarer and infinitely more difficult to achieve. The story of a woman who built the power to destroy an empire, carried that power alone for 23 years, and chose, in the end, to build something new instead. Sarah Kestrel would go on to help rebuild the first human colony in over 2 decades, standing on soil that had once been Dominion territory, watching children who had never known the sound of war play beneath a sky that finally, after everything, belonged to no one's fear, and carved into the memorial at Solheim Prime, beneath the names of everyone lost in the years the galaxy had called humanity extinct, a single line remained, visible to every visitor who came to remember what had almost been lost forever. Extinction was never the end of our story. It was only the silence before we chose who we would become.